consider myself to be a freedom fighter, a humanitarian, a peaceable person, and I started out this journey just searching for truth, trying to find out why everyone was so unhappy and so controlled, and why they wore masks, and why everyone was so afraid to speak the truth. And on that journey, I found a lot of answers that that led me to this point. I was raised as a Jehovah's Witness, and being raised in a situation like that, it taught me to question everything. And I was always questioning things, and I was always in trouble, and I was always told to just put up with it, and why do I have to cause trouble, and why can't I just accept things the way they are? Which of course made me even more determined to find out what truth is. And my search for truth has been going on for a long time, and it still is happening, and I'm learning more every day. But it's because I have an open mind. Oh, what a beautiful planet we live on. It's the most amazing. I mean, how blessed are we? We could live in paradise, and a lot of us do. I certainly do live in paradise. Such a beautiful planet that's being abused for the sake of commercial gain, for capitalism. It's being destroyed, and there are a few people, very wealthy people, who are making money from destroying the planet. And the people that are working for these people, basically, I consider them to be slaves, even though they may not know that they are. They're working, and they think that they're fantastically great citizens for doing whatever it takes to make money, and in doing so they're destroying the planet. And what I would really like to see, my ultimate goal, is basically to get humanity to see exactly what they're doing, to wake up. We don't have a second planet to go to. There's no plan B. We really have to stop and look at what we're doing. We really have to fix this planet. We have to start loving each other, being considerate of each other, accepting each other, leaving judgment behind, and only have compassion and love. And no more fear of people that call themselves authorities, because it's these very people that call themselves authorities that are the splinter of humanity, in my mind, in my opinion.
Now, you've obviously had first-hand experience with the corrupt side of the system. Let's go back to when your issues first started.
Last May 2012, I had two people staying at my home for a short time. They were both having issues with drugs, heavy prescription medications, pharmaceutical medications, and it was ruining their life. So I actually invited them to stay in my garage and basically nanny them back to health. So I took all their pills from them, and I made them sleep in the garage, and I asked them to sign for every pill and to account for every pill, and to basically get them off these terrible dependencies that they had on them. And we were doing really well. But it happened, in my belief, this is how it happened. One of them was of interest to the police, and in my belief, they found out that he was staying with me. So in May, I think it was the 11th of May, the police came into my home. I didn't answer the door. My son did, actually. My little son opened the door and allowed them to come in. So I was lying in bed and they came in. And of course, I'm not a morning person, so I'm outraged. I mean, I would have been outraged anyway, but I was absolutely outraged that these people, they weren't wearing uniforms. They looked like people that worked at Woolworths, you know, grocery store kind of uniforms, coming in with guns and telling me I had to get out of my bed. Of course, I was not dressed, and yet they forced me to get dressed in front of this female person, and forced me to go outside, and they said, "We're looking for drugs." And I said, "Well, there's no drugs here." And then they said, "Well, we're looking for marijuana." And I said, "Well, I have cannabis. I'm allowed to have cannabis. God says I can have cannabis." So they said, "Show us where it is." And I did. I had no qualms about being truthful. I had 3 small plants growing in the backyard. I mean, if I had been a decent grower, I would have been ashamed of my poor little plants who were quite neglected and well plucked. But, you know, I use that medicinally, and I have used it recreationally, and as far as I'm concerned, my firm belief is that, the Bible says in Genesis 1:29 that every herb-bearing seed is a gift from God to humanity. So I didn't have a problem with it, and I had seen that cannabis works really well on people that are rehabilitating from prescription drugs, which is the bane of humanity, which is what's causing all the problems in the world. So, of course, I don't have an issue with that. I was honest with the policy enforcers when they invaded my home illegally, as far as I'm concerned. And they said when they left that they would like me to sign these scraps of paper, basically a contract, agreeing to go to court. And I said no. I mean, that was just the beginning. They wanted me to give them a DNA test. They wanted, you know, for me to be tested, you know, my DNA tested. They wanted all these things from me, and I just said no, I will not comply. So that's where it started. I'm not sure exactly where my first court date was without looking through the paperwork now, but I went into court and I said, I do not consent, I do not accept your authority in any way, pretty much from the start, and that's how it's all come to this, because I don't accept their authority. I had not signed anything, except recently. This last time that they took me in to the watch house and then to the women's prison in Brisbane, I decided that I would sign it, and I have enough evidence against the corporate body called the Queensland Police Service to fight the charges and to prove them to be a completely invalid corporation posing as a governmental department. They're a completely de facto department. They have no authority. And without their uniforms and without this perception that they are authority, they are literally thugs in uniform, thugs in gang colours. They perform all kinds of crimes, extortion, theft, home invasions, assaults, kidnapping, and I really do feel strongly about that. And at this point in time, it's gone well past my 3 little plants that I had in my backyard. It's more to do with this needs to be exposed. People need to understand who it is they're giving their power away to, and I feel they don't scare me. They don't scare me at all, and I feel like I could be that person who could expose it. And I know I have so many networks, so many groups of people around me that are really keen to expose it as well, because it's actually quite a well-known fact, not widely known, but definitely well-known enough for us to all get together, to unite, come together against these corporate thugs and make a stand for humanity, introduce common law again. And I know, Mel, that you know about common law, so I'm not sure if you want me to go into detail with that at this point, but we need common law. We need to make sure that every person's rights are protected. If there's no victim, there's no crime.
Brilliant, I love it. Okay, so let's move on then to recent events. Let's talk about what happened on the 14th and be specific about times if you can.
Okay, that was a very interesting morning. I was still in my pyjamas. I know you've seen the video. I was still in my pyjamas, and 2 people come into the home. Of course, I recognised one of them. His name was Alan McBride. And he said, there's a warrant out for your arrest. And I said, no, there's not. And he argued the point. I know that there's not a warrant out for my arrest, and that's why they didn't have it with them. So, of course, I resisted, and I was loud, and I was forthright. So then Jonathan Allen McBride had said to me that at 12:17 p.m. that I was under arrest. And they literally did not have any valid reason whatsoever to arrest me. Under contract law, if there's no contract, there's no consent, and no one can be forced to contract with another. Because they had threatened me in the past, there was a person in the Maroochydore Magistrates Courthouse who calls himself Magistrate John Hodgins, who is impersonating a public servant, who said to me that if I don't sign a bail form, I will be jailed for 6 weeks. So I ended up signing the bail form. It was actually the day before Mother's Day. It was a kangaroo court on a Saturday morning where the judge was casual and the magistrate, or the person who calls himself the magistrate, was dressed casually. The transcriber was dressed casually. The duty solicitor was wearing jeans. I mean, the transcriber was wearing a football jersey. And everything that I said to John Hodgins were completely ignored. I told him that he can't threaten me, that he's operating a star chamber, and that I do not consent. And he said, if you don't sign this bail form right now, we're going to jail you for 6 weeks. So I signed it V.C because I can't actually remember what the V.C means at this point in time, but it means basically, it's a Latin term, that means that you've been coerced, you've been threatened and forced to sign a document that you do not agree with. And I had done this once before. In fact, it came up in that kangaroo court session on that Saturday with John Hodgins, because I actually had been in the watch house that night for not coming to court, because I had signed a document in front of 2 policy enforcers under protest and duress. And I wrote it very clearly. I didn't V.C it at that point. I actually wrote under protest and duress. So witnessed by 2 police officers and or policy enforcers and a clerk of the court in Nambour in Queensland. So I did not feel at all as though I was required to do anything. The court, being corrupt, did not send me any notifications of the court date that came around on the 2nd of September. I did actually think it was the 3rd of September, but nevertheless, I wouldn't have gone anyway. So they did not send me any notifications of when the court date was coming up. They had made a promise in court to supply me with a brief of evidence, which is all, I guess, the dirt they have on me. And none of it arrived at all. So I just decided that I wasn't going to go. I'd signed it V.C. It was clearly under protest and duress. I was coerced and threatened to sign this document, which of course is not lawful in any sense. And yes, so on the 2nd of September, the person who calls himself Magistrate John Hodgins, he acknowledged to Jonathan McBride, and I've heard this through a second source, that he knows that I'm not on bail. I actually missed out a step. The step in between was I did turn up to court on the 20th of May, and I stood in the in the gallery. I refused to go to the dock. I stood basically in the gallery and refused to go any further. I didn't acknowledge the person who calls himself a magistrate at all. And when I was ready, I faced him and I said, I'm the person's personal representative in being, and I'd like to see a writ of commission, please. At this point in time, John Hodgins was very nervous, and he started to babble, actually. He said something about the OPPT things were clearly my lack of ignorance, which basically means I'm not ignorant, but he was just babbling, because asking for his writ of commission made him very nervous. So I asked him again. I said, I'd like to see your writ of commission, please. He ignored it again. And then he all of a sudden said, this matter's adjourned till the 2nd of September. And I said, I do not consent. Now, if you keep in mind, I'm not actually in the courtroom, so therefore I'm not in his jurisdiction whatsoever. I'm in the gallery, and he is ordering me around like he has jurisdiction over me. And clearly, if I'm the person's personal representative, which is basically, as you know, Melanie, the straw man, my corporate persona, my birth certificate, that's the person. I am the person's personal representative in being, which means that I cannot be forced to contract. Everything has to be done willingly. So very clearly, he was in dishonour at that point, and he knew he was in dishonour because he fled the courtroom. He fled. I had 4 witnesses with me, and bail was not enlarged. I did not sign a bail form. There was no mention of bail at all. And considering that I'd signed my previous document V.C, which meant under protest and duress, I certainly was not obliged to enter the courtroom at all on the 2nd of September, and I didn't. So this de facto court, this unlawful court that they're operating, had an arrest warrant put out for me, and Jonathan McBride called a friend of mine and said, there's been a warrant issued for Pieta. And my friend said, there can't have been a warrant issued because she wasn't on bail. Now, my friend is a former policy enforcer, so he's well aware of the Bail Act in Queensland. And because he's well aware of the Bail Act, he said to me, if you're not on bail, they cannot arrest you. Of course, I've done research on that, and that is confirmed in the Bail Act. They can't arrest you if you're not on bail. And I wasn't on bail. So he brought this to Jonathan's attention on the phone that day, and Jonathan acknowledged to my friend that the John Hodgins, the person impersonating a public servant, the one who calls himself a magistrate, acknowledged that I wasn't on bail. And Jonathan McBride, my kidnapper, acknowledged also that he knew that I wasn't on bail. But regardless, on the 14th, Jonathan and his co-conspirator, his partner in crime, Glenn Elliott, turn up to the home where I'm staying and trespass. They opened a gate and let the livestock out onto a public road. They assaulted me. They kidnapped me, as you've seen in the video. And since then, of course, I've been forced to sign another bail form, which I don't want to sign any contracts. The court to me is the most disgusting place you'd ever want to end up. It's a house of extortion. And, of course, I never want to do that. But at this point in time, it's not about my 3 plants anymore. Basically, they picked a fight with the wrong person. I don't have a criminal history. I'm a peace-loving person that is all for happiness and kindness, and all I want is for everyone to be happy and loved and comfortable and abundant. And of course, that's why I find the court system so repugnant, is because they are extorting money from the poorest people on the planet. Some of the poorest people on the planet. Families in Australia are suffering terribly because of this system of extortion that the corporate governments are supporting. So they picked a fight with the wrong person. It's not personal anymore. Now it's, come on everybody, let's get together, let's prove to the whole of Australia, to the whole of the world, that these people who call themselves authority literally have no authority whatsoever. There's no writ of commission. The policy enforcers are not oath and bonded to the people. They're not public servants. In fact, a police officer in Cleveland told me, he said, I'm not a public servant, I'm a police officer. So we need to raise awareness. These people are being obedient to corporate governments, to corporate institutions, money money-making institutions that have no authority, that certainly don't have better moral compasses than you and I and the rest of the population, because they're beating people, they're killing people, they're stealing from people, they're, conducting home invasions, they're stealing people's children. My whole ordeal, I felt like I was pretty well informed, but I tell you, having been put into a prison and a watch house and being transported between the two and finding out how they treat people and what they're doing to people, all for the sake of money, makes me absolutely so doggedly determined to fix this and to raise awareness and to for help for humanity.
So they took you to the watch house. Take it from there.
Okay. Well, they took me to the watch house, and I do my usual thing. They ask, I wish to answer any of your questions. I will not answer your questions. They weren't too bad. They were very rude, and of course they take photos of you, and if you don't comply with the photos, they actually get quite aggressive, and you can feel it in the air. One of them did assault me in the watch house, not this time but last time, so I am wary. So I let them take a photo of me. That's no skin off my nose, because they actually haven't seen a scrap of identification from me. Not a scrap. They don't know really who I am. I don't have a valid driver's license. They have not seen anything. They've fingerprinted me, they've taken photos, that's fine. But I will not answer any of their questions. I will not answer the questions about my name or anything. The only thing I will tell them is that I'm allergic to fluoride and that I am a vegan. So that's it. So they bring me in, and then of course they take everything that you have from you. They take your jewellery, and they take anything with strings on it. They take your shoes. They take your bra. And they put you in, I'm not sure if you know what a Besser block is.
No.
It's 5 by 5 Besser blocks, this little room that they put you in. The camera is constantly on you, on the toilet, so you have no privacy whatsoever. The light is on constantly. So yeah, there's no privacy, and you have people checking on you. With a concrete slab for a bed, with 3 plastic-covered cushions. They're cushions to lay on the concrete slab. If you're lucky, they give you a blanket. If they want to be difficult, they don't. You must ask for toilet paper. And all you have in the cell is a little bubbler with fluoridated water, which I did try to drink the first time they locked me up in there, but I ended up vomiting all night, and I told them that they must call a doctor. It's their duty of care to call a doctor, so they did. They called the ambulance, and they ended up supplying me with bottled water. So that was nice of them. But anyway, the rooms are very dark, except like dark as in there's no natural sunlight, but there's a fluorescent light on constantly. It's a very unpleasant place. Very unpleasant. And I think, every time I heard one of the policy enforcers come down the hallway with keys, be prepared for whatever might come next. Because some of them are quite brutal and quite nasty, and of course I've caused a lot of problems for them. I'm not well liked amongst the Queensland Police Service because I'm very vocal against their crimes that they've committed.
All right, so obviously you weren't in there for terribly long. Let's talk about what happened once you were inside.
Okay, well, I was in there from obviously the 14th, Saturday, until the Monday morning when I was forced to go to court. A white shirt that was clinging to my body, and it was a little bit transparent. So I didn't really feel comfortable not wearing a bra because they refused to let me wear my bra. But my other choice was to turn up to court in prison browns, which I refused to do. So I ended up going without a bra. I thought, well, it's not my dignity that's at stake, it's their dignity and how they've treated me. So I wasn't too concerned about that after a while. The court case was an absolute joke. A couple of minutes before they took me up to the courtroom, it was explained to me, sorry, I guess I'm skipping a step here. That morning, they had offered me state legal aid. Basically, the state pays for these people to help you. They work for the state, though. So it's obviously a very unjust system where the state is against you. The judge works for the state, the prosecutor works for the state, and so do the state-supplied solicitors. So I said, no, I don't need legal aid. And I said, okay, fine. So me into the lift to go from the watch house, from the cells up to the courtroom. And just before I was pushed into the elevator or escorted into the elevator, a policy enforcer named Joe Moore said to me, they've opposed bail. And I said, well, that's not, you should have told me that before. You should have disclosed that. And she said, well, it's too late now. So I go into the courtroom, and I knew that I had a bit of a fight on my hands. And Judge Callahan and I, Judge Callahan, well, she's impersonating a public servant, clearly. Her name's Bernadette Callahan. Her and I have had a few run-ins before because I refused to accept her authority. And I had been involved in cases with other freedom fighters who had recorded how badly she'd behaved in court and how in dishonour she actually was. So a couple of court sessions actually ended up on the internet, and she had clearly blamed me for that. So she was quite delighted to see me in a position where I was locked in a perspex box and in a vulnerable position. And she said to me that, well, I explained to her that they can't hold me here. I'm not on bail. I said, you know that. John Hodgins, the other so-called magistrate, knew that. And she said to me at that point that none of that mattered, and if I think I'm not on bail, then she was determined to lock me up until the 30th of September, which would have been 2 weeks' time, nearly. Yeah, well, at that point it was 2 weeks' time. Lock me in a women's prison until they can prove that I was, in fact, on bail. I said to her at that point, I said, you need to prove it now. Where is your paperwork that I have signed that says I am actually on bail? And she produced this document that had my name there, and it had V.C. before it. And I said, clearly this was signed under protest and duress, V.C. This is an invalid document. And, of course, that was the document that John Hodgins forced me to sign. He said if I didn't sign that document, that he would lock me up for 6 weeks. So, very clearly, the threats and the extortion and the abuse that they've been perpetuating on everyone is very clear, and you can see it clearly on my documents, and it will all be on the transcripts. When I first brought it to John Hodgins' attention that I'd signed under protest and duress, he said, I don't care, you still signed it. That should all be on the court transcripts, unless the transcribers are just as corrupt as the so-called magistrates, but I doubt that. So it should all be there in evidence. So anyway, that day, on that Monday morning, Bernadette Callahan told me that she was going to lock me in a women's prison until they could prove that I was actually on bail. So 2 weeks in a women's prison. Of course, at that point, I mean, they don't scare me, and they will never make me cry. So at that point, I just shrugged my shoulders and I just said, oh well. they already knew at this point that, I mean, all of them know me. I actually have contracts with every one of the magistrates at the Maroochydore Courthouse and quite a few of the policy enforcers as well. I had sent them a contract saying to them, cease and desist, you are not a lawful entity, you have no authority over me, and until you prove that you do have authority over me, if you do not cease and desist, here are my terms and conditions. I used an OPPT courtesy notice to enact this contract. It's a very an excellent template for anyone to use if they're being harassed by someone who calls themselves authorities. And that's what I did. I sent out actually, I think, 14 of them, but every one of these so-called magistrates were served and were invoiced as well. So just the fact that I was facing a woman that I had a contract with was clearly a conflict of interest. And surely the proceedings wouldn't go further. But nevertheless, it did. So then on that Monday morning, I was expecting to have visitors in. I knew that I'd had a lot of supporters. A lot of people are very passionate in the world of the de facto governments, these governments that are masquerading as the people's governments, you know, under the guise of democracy, when in fact they're corporate governments, money-making institutions extorting money from people. So, waiting for my supporters, and they hadn't turned up. I knew at that point, on that Monday morning, that the policy enforcers had pulled a Swiftie. Because in the courtroom, as they were, you know, they pulled a Swiftie and sent all my my supporters, my court supporters, to another courtroom. So no one, I did not have any witnesses in the courtroom with me. There were probably about a dozen policy enforcers in with me, and looking like thugs. And all my supporters were in another courtroom waiting for my case. So clearly they were redirected to the wrong courtroom, because they are basically tired of my, as what they call antics, which is not my antics as I see it. In my mind, it's my duty to myself and to humanity to not be treasonous and support a de facto government. Okay, so I had no supporters and I was escorted down to my designated cell. And the next morning, on the Tuesday, I was informed that I would be going to the Brisbane Women's Prison in Wacol. And so it happened. One nice piece to this story is I actually have met a policy enforcer who I felt was a really wonderful person. And he actually insisted that a female officer come down in the van with me to make sure that I was okay. So that was a real blessing, and it's a real reminder that the human spirit does really shine through. Okay, so I'm escorted in a van. It's a white van, a normal-sized transit van, I guess you would call it. And it has a metal case. You're basically encased with metal, and you've got a tiny little air space to breathe in. They have the air conditioning on if they're good policy enforcers or kind or have any scrap of humanity in them, and some of them don't. So I was treated quite well on that first trip when I was escorted with the female policy enforcer who was designated to make sure that I was going to be okay and well looked after. Obviously, this policy enforcer that was on, that had some compassion for me, was concerned that they were going to do something. So I arrived at the Brisbane Women's Prison unharmed, and when I walked in, I was immediately met by a woman who was incarcerated there, but who basically works as a slave labourer. Her name was Di, and she immediately said, "Can I get you something to eat? Can I get you a cup of tea?" She organised prison-issue clothes for me, and she was very kind, and she gave me some, this is your first in jail advice. how to really avoid getting beaten up or upsetting anyone, which of course I knew wouldn't happen. So, but I listened respectfully and I said, thank you so much for that. And I took it on board. And it took quite a long time for them to process me. They ask you to see a doctor. They ask you to see a counsellor. It's not quite a strip search, but they do ask you to basically take your shirt off, and they check to make sure that you don't have any drugs or anything dangerous on you. But it wasn't quite a strip search, which was a relief, because I find that absolutely repulsive that another human being can do that to another human being. It really makes me wild, that stuff. These people have no authority whatsoever. They're the same people that could live next door or that you've grown up with. They have no authority over you whatsoever, and they're asking you to get dressed or undressed in front of them, and it's an absolute human rights violation. But anyway, we got through that. I was a lot more lenient. Not that I have any authority over these people that were put in this place, but I put up with a lot more from the women in the correctional centre than I would have from the police, because honestly I didn't know how long I was going to be there, and I'd been denied phone calls. The policy enforcers in Maroochydore refused to allow me one phone call. No matter how many times I asked, they said no, no, no. So in the Women's Correctional Centre, I was lucky enough, after spending some time with this counsellor on this compulsory counselling appointment, she offered for me to use the phone. And I was really grateful. And it was a miracle. I remembered a phone number. An absolute miracle, because I'm not great with remembering numbers. So I was able to ring Sean at that point, who was obviously very concerned about me, because the policy enforcers and the courts had directed them to the wrong courtroom, so he didn't have a clue what was going on, and it was just so wonderful to hear his voice, and then to hear him say that there's just so much support, everything's going to be fine, help is on its way. And I mean, at this point I was wondering how long I was going to be in there, but I wasn't afraid. They'll never make me afraid. So I was very happy at that point. And then, of course, I'm escorted into another section of the prison where I met some amazing women, absolutely amazing women, tough, courageous, kind, loving, caring women, rough diamonds, but diamonds nonetheless. And honestly, I feel blessed for having been through that and having met these women. And the funny thing is that, I don't have a criminal history, as I said before. The only thing that I do that is considered criminal under their system is I'm a cannabis activist. Free the herb. It's the most amazing plant on the planet, can cure basically anything. The most fantastic medicine, 50,000 uses industrially. And so I'm a cannabis activist. So I'm definitely in no way a criminal. And I walk into this women's prison, into this section where they've assigned me, and I see someone that I know. She was actually a friend of my ex-husband's, and I see her there, and she gives me a hug, and there's other women fussing around me and making sure I have tampons and toilet paper, and giving me a hug and saying, "You'll be right, love, come and sit with, you'll be fine, don't worry about anything." And of course I wasn't worried anyway. Because with me, and I'm sure a lot of people realise this, is if you treat someone with respect, that respect comes back to you in turn. So I don't have issues with people that way. And I am generally treated kindly. I don't generally have issues with people at all. So I wasn't afraid. But walking into this situation and being welcomed and being loved and even mothered, a little bit mothered, was just amazing. And, you know, listening to their stories, what's happened to them, how they got there, how long they've done. Some of them, you know, these so-called offences were so petty. There was no forensic evidence, there was no proof whatsoever, but because they may have done something wrong in the past, or they may have done something, or they may have owed money to the corporate government in terms of fines or warrants, they were held there. The families had broken up. Their children had been taken from them. One piece of advice that died, the lady that gave me the cup of tea at the beginning of the women's prison saga said to me was, whatever you do, please don't mention children in here, because she said, you may be missing your children, but these women, some of them haven't seen them for years. So it's an issue that you just do not bring up because it's such an emotional issue that brings out so much anger, and rightly so. But these amazing women, they showed me so much strength in the human spirit, and so much love, and survival. Oh, their survival skills are amazing. I mean, they live on these rations. They call them prison rations. Once the food runs out, basically you're living on bread, if you're lucky, with no spreads or anything, and just awful food, no tea or coffee or anything like that, of course. They work all week for around $20 for private corporations making furniture or cleaning the jail, or, you know, basically making money for private corporations inside a so-called government jail, just so that they can afford some cigarettes, and, you know, maybe some coffee and some shampoo. You know, it's just unbelievable, but the human spirit, it just shines through, and I honestly felt blessed being there, and of course with the work that I'm doing, my humanitarian work, it's really opened my eyes to the amount of human rights abuses that are happening right under our noses. There was a woman in there who, I know this sounds incredible, as she's telling me, my heart broke for her. She had lost her sister, she'd lost her mother, she'd lost her daughter, and her husband had been murdered in front of her. And she had a boil on her, and because of her drug history, she'd been to hospital with staph infections 6 times. She was that ill. She got blood poisoning and was so ill. And there she has another boil on her, and they refused her medical treatment. She had a fever. There was a red line going down the back of her leg, and it was swollen and red and hideous, and they refused to give her medical attention. And, I mean, these human rights abuses, they need to be brought to the attention of the people. People are so quick to judge, you know, oh, you break the law, you do the time. Well, first of all, whose law? If it's not common law and there's no injured party, there is no crime. And secondly, who are we to judge? I cannot be anyone's moral compass, as they cannot be mine. Anyway, human rights abuses. This is a big thing on my list that I know I need to deal with and need to bring to the attention of the world, of everyone.
All right, so you weren't in there for terribly long. You must have been thrilled to eventually get out. Let's talk about coming to court on the Thursday.
Okay, yeah, so that was then the Tuesday afternoon that I arrived at the women's prison, and I spent one night there and one morning, and yeah, interesting experience and fantastic experience. And then all of a sudden, as I was speaking to one of the ladies, my name's called up. Morgan, you called into court, you've got to leave now. And I went to the desk and I said, this is unusual. As far as I know, court isn't scheduled until the 30th. And she said, I don't know why you've been called in now. You've got to go now. So I said my goodbyes to the ladies, and there were hugs, and it was all very lovely. And I waited around until the van came from the Maroochydore Watch House to collect me. And the van was the same as the other van. It had the metal insert in it. There's no seatbelt, of course, and there's very little air. And if they don't put the air conditioning on in summertime or when it's hot, it's stifling. There's no airflow in there. So as they were driving to Maroochydore from the women's prison in Brisbane, the two policy enforcers that were from the Maroochydore Watch House, they actually refused to turn on my air. It was 30 degrees Celsius, which is very hot when you're in a box lined with metal and no air. And I was beginning to feel myself pass out in the back of the van, and I was banging on the wall. And there's actually a sign on the back of the window in this van that says, beware, there is constant audio and visual surveillance for your safety. So I knew very well that they could hear and see that I was not coping and that I was about to pass out. This went on for, I would say, 45 minutes in the heat of the day, so it was around lunchtime that I was being transported. Very hot, no air, no breeze, nothing, until they eventually turned it on. We made a detour then to pick up two other people from Caboolture, which is in between Brisbane and Nambour. Two young guys who seemed very friendly, but before that, they opened up the back when we arrived in Caboolture, the policy enforcer did, and when he opened up this tiny little square, I suppose it would be 6 by 6 inches, and he said, "You want air? Here's your air." So he opens up this tiny little thing to give me air. But anyway, I was fine. And at that point, I see these two young men getting into the other side because this van is split in the middle. So I guess it would be to separate male and females. So they're in the other side, and as they were getting in, I gave them both a smile because, of course, I was getting as much air as I could. So I had my face in that little hole, and I gave them a smile. And we had a nice conversation all the way to Maroochydore. And one of the young men in the van, because we were talking, we could hear each other, not very well, but we could hear each other. And he made a point of saying, "Thank you so much for smiling at me." That kind of simple human kindness made an impression on him, and another reminder just how easy it is to be kind and how easy it is to show some human kindness and make a difference. And he chatted all the way, and he was a real sweetheart. Yes. So anyway, we arrived at the Maroochydore Watch House, and of course they throw me in a cell again, and they say to me that I must go to court the next day. Of course, it's unscheduled, so I've wondered what had gone on. I knew that something was in the air. As you know, the video was pretty clear about who was actually working behind the scenes to make sure I was released. I'm not sure if I'm able to disclose any more of that in this interview, but I knew that there was something happening. So I actually was very happy to be going to court. Obviously, Bernadette Callahan, the person who calls herself a magistrate, had clearly been shown that she'd done the wrong thing, and that was very clear in court the next day. But I was very relaxed and I wasn't afraid, and quite prepared for what was coming. I really did have faith that everything was going to be fine. Of course, they refused me a phone call again. They would not let me contact anyone to support me. They didn't want anyone, by any means, in that courtroom to support me. They didn't want it in the newspaper. They didn't want anyone to know that I was there. So again, they said to me the next morning, what morning was that? What morning are we up to? That was the Thursday morning. So the Thursday morning, as usual, they would say to me, "Would you like legal aid?" And I thought to myself, this is my only chance to get a phone call out. If I don't take this opportunity, they will not let me use the phone. No one's going to know I'm here. So at that point I said, I'll think about that. then a lady from Legal Aid came in to see me, and she said, "How are you going? I was trying to get your attention in court the other day." She said, "We'd really like to help you." And I said, "Okay, well, I'm thinking about that." I said, "Are you able to make a phone call for me?" And she said, "I won't be your solicitor if you choose to use Legal Aid." She said, "There's another man who will be." And I just knew who it was because I've been to court so many times now over the same issue. I'd seen this man before, and he had me giggling once because he has a real personality about him. So I knew who it was, and I just knew in my heart that it was him. And when I saw him, I was very relieved. But anyway, I said, "Okay, I'd like to see this person, Michael, if he's prepared to see me." And she said, yes, we want to help you. So when I met with that Legal Aid solicitor, he was just lovely and delightful, and he got to know me a little bit first, and I think, of course, he'd heard a lot about me anyway. But I said, "Listen, would you be able to make a phone call for me?" And he said yes. Woohoo! But finally a phone call after all that time. So he made a phone call to Sean, and he left a message on Sean's answering machine. And at that point, I knew everything was going to be fine. And Sean, of course, was more wary of the courts and the policy enforcers telling lies about which courtroom I was going to be in. So that Thursday morning, when they took me up to court, again without a bra, my supporters are there, smiling and shiny and gorgeous and wonderful, and gosh, I love them. And that was when Bernadette Callahan, the person who calls herself the magistrate, actually admitted that it was not just for me to be incarcerated, and that it had been playing on her mind. I mean, I'm going to stop there and just say alarm bells should be going off everywhere at that statement. These people are making decisions about people's lives constantly. I mean, if I hadn't have been in the media, would she have been so repentant? Would she have changed her mind? It was an absolute miscarriage of justice that had been leaked to the press, that everyone knew about. They even spoke about it going viral on social media and the internet. So at this point, of course, Bernadette Callahan is very repentant, and she doesn't feel like it's the right thing to do. And I'm listening to this and I'm thinking, how many other people have you done this to that haven't had the support network that I've had? Which is outrageous. It's outrageous. Not being able to use a phone, not being able to help yourself. Visitors come to the jail once a month. All this stuff. Like, they're separating people from the help that they need. Very purposely. For monetary gain. Slavery system, you know, it couldn't be much clearer. Anyway, so then Bernadette Callahan, under the instruction of the police prosecutor tried to have me post a surety for bond, a financial payment for bond, or someone else's finances or property as bond. And I said no. And they tried to put a few conditions on this, and I was very determined no, that they weren't going to. As it turned out, they wanted me to stay in one home because I live in Mapleton, but at the moment I'm staying at Mount Mead. So they wanted to specify where I was going to be, so that I wasn't going to be a bail risk and flee bail. So, I mean, at this point in time, I'm realising that this is so much more than my little 3 plants. This is about humanity, and I'm absolutely certain at this point that we can get together a huge legal team and not so much combat the 3 cannabis plants, because as I said right from the beginning, I do not accept your authority. You're not my moral compass, and you have no authority and no right to come between what the Bible says, and the whole legal system is based on the Bible, and my rights as a human being. So it's not about that. It's about, at this point, proving that the courts are de facto, that it is a slavery system, it's extortion, and I would really like to get a fantastic legal team in on the 17th of December and have this absolutely sorted and basically expose the so-called judicial system for what it is. Well, basically, I guess all I really wanted to say is, at this point, just how grateful I am and how blessed I feel, and really from the depths of my heart, thank you to everyone who's been so supportive and comforting and worked so tirelessly. So many people. I'm just so grateful for everything they've done and humbled. And yeah, that. It's really important for me to express that. Secondly, I would really like anyone who feels they would like to be involved in the freedom of humanity to step forward and to sign an oath and bond to the people, to make a decision whether they're going to follow corporate law, follow and obey corporations rather than the people, the good of humanity. Of course, it needs to be brought to people's attention what the courts have been doing, what the policy enforcers have been doing. The government is not a government, people. It's a corporation, a money-making venture. And guess what? The people aren't getting the money. They're suffering. They're suffering for it. It's based on abuse and extortion, kidnapping, murder at times. And I guess I would just like to say to everyone who's listening to this, which side are you going to take? What are you going to do now? Now that you know this, and you can research this, you don't need to take my word for it. Do your research. Find out that your government is registered in a stock exchange. You know, it's a money-making venture. Find out who are you, where do your, where is your heart? Where does your heart lie? Does it lie with a money-making corporation, or does it lie with your brothers and sisters, humanity? Does it lie with Mother Earth, or does it lie with the fracking and the mining companies? Where are your intentions? What do you want as a future? Do you want to see this planet being destroyed? Do you want to see poverty continue? Families being broken up, children being stolen, people being kidnapped and held in prisons when they desperately need some help to get over illnesses and drug addiction. Where is your heart? What would you like to do? I guess it's a call to humanity, and it needs to be heard. Are we going to stand up against these corporations that are enslaving humanity? Are we going to stand up together, or are we going to let this system perpetuate slavery, perpetuate poverty, perpetuate destruction of our planet? What are we going to do? Are we going to stand together? Because I know that I will stand alone if I have to. But I know that there are so many people that are seeing it. Mel, you and I have so many contacts between us, mutual friends that are passionate about this cause, humanitarians that are working tirelessly to get this planet back on track, to get humanity healthy and happy again and abundant. And I guess I'm just making a call to the rest of humanity. You know, where does your heart lie? Does it lie with money? Does it lie with plastic toys and metal cars? Or does it lie with your neighbour who needs your help? Does it lie with your children who deserve to have a good future? You know, we have to ask ourselves these questions because we've come to a crossroads now. There's no turning back from this point. My little saga is just one of many. I have so many people in my network that are fighting the same fight that I am, maybe for different reasons, and maybe they call themselves different names, constitutionalists or some other thing. I'm a freedom fighter. I'm a free woman. I'm a sovereign being. I'm so many different things, but my heart is in with humanity. My heart is with the earth, and I would just love to see my brothers and sisters stand up and say enough's enough. you corporations, you don't run the place. And you're foreclosed. You were foreclosed on the 25th of December last year. And we need to enforce this as people. People power. John Lennon said it. Power to the people. Come on, people. Stand up. Don't be afraid anymore. The minute you stand up, you've got so many people behind you. You would be amazed. Because we've come to this golden age. We've come to a crossroads. Let's just stand up. And anyone who's willing to do the right thing for their brothers and sisters and for humanity and for the earth, for the planet, for a golden age, an age of abundance, I'm with them all the way. As I know you are, Melanie, and so many others. Let's join in. Let's join in. Let's love each other. Let's get together and fix this place. Get rid of these corporations that are raping the planet. Let's fix it. We can all do it. We just need to show love. It's all about love and where our heart lies. I guess that's really all I wanted to say.